Good morning, good afternoon, good evening. Welcome to another episode of the Striker Tejas podcast. Very happy to be back after a bye week last week. We're really excited to be back for another episode of the podcast to talk about everything that happened for the Texas USL teams, whether it's RGV FC, whether it's San Antonio FC, and El Paso Locomotive. And obviously, we've got a lot to talk about, and we've got most of the crew here with us today. Unfortunately, Roberto could not be here, but we do have Joe Rodriguez from the Borderlands. Joe, how you doing?
Hey, what's going on, Edson? Jonathan, good to be back after taking a week break. But it's great to be back with all of you, ready to talk about what's been a lot of activity for our Texas USL teams, and ready to get into it. It's good to be back.
And of course, all the way from 210 area code, we've got Jonathan Check from San Antonio, Texas. Jonathan?
Like I told you before we started recording, I'm surviving. I've been covering for John Arnold at the MLS level the last few weeks, and it's been crazy with lots of games, them having a wonderful pattern of conceding late goals. That makes it really fun, especially with us, trying to file recaps and stuff. But again, I'm surviving, and it's nice to kind of come back to the USL sphere tonight.
I feel bad to the fact that while I was over there in Mickey Mouse Land in Florida, having the time of my life, here we got Jonathan checked, like working day in and day out, not only for San Antonio, but for FC Dallas. So I feel real bad about it. But anyway, idiot miles per hour, Marty. And as quickly as the DeLorean has to go through to be able to activate the time circuits, let's go ahead and go and talk about the last couple of games that the Texas teams had in the USL Championship. Obviously, we had RGVFC play New Mexico United twice. They played them once last Wednesday, which was the what was it? The 5th, I think, or the 6th of July, which was a match that was postponed from a couple of weeks ago due to some situations with the weather that did not allow them to transition from the baseball field into the soccer field for New Mexico United. It was decided to be moved for the 6th of July. And in that match, New Mexico United ends up getting a 1-0 win. But right off the bat, you saw what I think a lot of people have said, a lot of analysts have said about RGV. I know one of them has got to be John Morrissey from USL Tactics. He always talks about how RGVFC, for the most part, has looked good in the fact that they don't really allow opposing teams to have a lot of good chances on goal. And that's pretty much what we saw from RGV. Basically, it was, they limited New Mexico United chances on goal. I know for a couple of moments, it seemed like New Mexico just kept spamming the long ball, trying to get that ball past the defensive line, but the defensive line kind of held really well. Javier Garcia once again got the start for RGVFC, had a really good game there as well. But unfortunately for RGV, and this is something that that I've been talking about all this season, and it was just pretty much the epitome of a good summary of the season as a whole for RGV. One little mistake cost the game for RGV. And that was, all the way in the 84th minute. So there were like 6 minutes to go. They could have gotten a 0-0 draw, which would have been fair for both teams. But unfortunately, RGV makes a mistake when they had clear possession of the ball. Juan Pablo Torres tries to find Juan David Cabezas in the midfield. Cabezas makes a big mistake waiting for the ball to get to him instead of going up to meet to the ball. The New Mexico United midfield takes advantage of that, steals the ball away, gets the ball over, I believe it was to Kaiservetter. And Eric Pimentel already had, he had him covered. he was leading Kaiserwetter over towards the end line. However, Luka Milicevic, I don't know if he was I don't know, because he had barely come in a couple of minutes ago into the match. I don't know if he was lost, or if he just had too much um, emphasis to try to make a play to not be on the bench anymore, to try to convince Wilmer. And so what ended up happening is, what is his intent of trying to get to the ball, he ends up clipping Kaiserwetter inside the penalty box. Referee doesn't think twice about it, calls the penalty. Javi Garcia is unable to score the penalty by Justin Portillo, and the Toros did not have enough time to be able to get the ball and get the equalizer, and that happened. So that happened on June the 6th, and then in the Saturday after, same time or same place, against the same rival, New Mexico United, RGVFC Part 2, also played at Isotopes Park. RGV made a couple of changes into the lineup. You started to see players like Frank Nadars make a comeback, Dylan Borjak make a comeback, as well as Adolfo Hernandez, and try to get a more favorable result for RGVFC. It was more of the same, more possession dominance by RGV FC. Obviously, torrential downpour made things difficult for the camera and all this stuff. But anyway, New Mexico United gets an early goal in the 21st minute off of a corner, if I'm not mistaken. See, I would know if the camera actually was pointed in the direction of where the play was, but that's neither here nor there. But Jerome Kaiserwetter gets the header past Javi Garcia. And it was more of the same, where RGVFC just cannot make any good opportunities on goal that actually made Alex Tambakis work for it. In fact, Javi Garcia, who also made the start once again for New Mexico United, he had one key save, against Kaiserwetter off of a header. And it was not until the dying moments of the match, in the 90th minute, where Jesus Vasquez, who had not been seen in RGVFC's lineup in a while, comes in off the bench and off of a corner by Isidro Martinez, gets the equalizing goal at the death. After those minutes, it seemed like RGV could have an opportunity to actually get the game-winning goal, but they weren't able to, and they had to settle for a 1-1 draw at Isotopes Park. My summary from these two matches is, yes, we have defensive improvements, but offensively, the thing about it is it just won't start. Honestly, it's kind of like the DeLorean when it's I don't know if y'all seen part 1, where he has to go back from the thunderstorm, and the car just won't start. That's basically RGVFC's offense. And I remember talking to friends from the supporters groups, and I told them about the game. Basically, I said, the thing about it is, just like Frank Gaviria and Adolfo Hernandez, they're players that they're key strikers inside the box. We got to serve them balls. But if you don't have wingers that can send accurate crosses to them, you can't do anything with them. So that's the biggest thing about RGVFC. 1 point out of 6 really isn't great in their quest to make it to the playoffs. But I don't know what you guys think about that evaluation.
Yeah, no, definitely. Sorry, go ahead, Jonathan.
I was just going to quickly say, I don't know that. I think you're right. A point from those 2 games in the grand scheme of things, not very helpful for them. But at the same time, a point from 2 games against New Mexico, if you can get anything out of that field and that environment, that stadium, that's somewhat of a positive, I guess.
And facing that style of play too. Let's not forget about that.
Right. That's pretty much all I was going to say. I have a joke about Edson and all of his. I'm not sure if you actually went to Disney World or if you just binged Back to the Future for a week, because we're making all those references today. But
yeah, what's up with that? That's Universal Studios. You were at Mickey
I went to
Land.
both. I went to both
Oh,
actually.
okay,
That's
okay,
where I got
okay.
the
That
shirt.
explains it.
Oh,
Yeah.
okay. No,
But
but
usually my binging, I do it when I'm here. I have all three Blu-rays for the what was the 35th anniversary pack.
no,
That
but going back to the back-to-back matches at RGV, that's just a little bit of bad luck to have that situation where you play two matches in what was it the span of 3 days. It just going to the land of enchantment for one game is tough enough. Two, it makes it quite difficult. But yeah, I mean, if there's anything to take away, I mean, if there's any silver lining, you said it best. That's in the game in which they lose 1-0 to. Unfortunately, you could chalk it up to just a moment of a lack of concentration is what marked the difference in that one. I mean, if that moment doesn't happen, you have possibly most likely another draw, and all of a sudden, two draws going into New Mexico, you would feel damn good about that.
Mhm. Definitely. So obviously, there's a lot of improvement that needs to be done for RGVFC. Um, but I think overall, defensively, there's really not a lot to nitpick out of this team, at least from the starters' point of view. But moving on to the next match, I know San Antonio FC had a bye week, so unfortunately, Jonathan, we're gonna have to skip you this week in this particular section. You're welcome to chime in. But Joe, you guys went up against Colorado Springs Switchbacks this past weekend. Tell us more about that game.
Yeah, no, it was a 1-0 victory for El Paso Locomotive FC in what the lone goal that was scored in that match um, made the Sports Center top 10 number 2 play of the night. So, needless to say, I think it was safe to say that it was the goal of the week in the USL Championship, which I don't think they officially announced one this week, and I think that's probably why that was the case. Or at least I don't think they have. Correct me if I'm wrong. But anyhow, no, just 18th minute. Oh, well, the game got started with some adversity for the Locomotive. In the 4th minute, the team captain, center defender, Yuma goes down with a bit of a what appeared to be a muscular strain, and on his right leg, I believe, if I recall correctly, goes out in the 4th minute, and John Hutchinson turns to Martin Payares to get to fill in for Yuma. Payares obviously is a player that hasn't had a lot of minutes. First year player for the Locomotive, hasn't had a lot of minutes. Suffered a little bit of an injury at the beginning of the season. Struggled to get into form. Struggled to find his way into a situation where he could play more minutes. So he was thrown into the deep end of the swimming pool with the circumstances that presented themselves Saturday night. And obviously, this trial by fire, safe to say he passed the test. In this situation with the Locos getting the clean sheet, the goal comes in the 18th minute when Eder Boroli attacks from the left flank and sends a cross to the far post, and he finds or the cross finds a charging Aaron Gomez, and it kind of looked like, as much as you can like throw a post in American football to a wide receiver where you just hit him in stride. That's exactly what the case was with this diving header by Aaron Gomez. I mean, with that cross, with Borelli's cross, he hit Aaron Gomez on the post, and the goalie just stood frozen, couldn't do anything about it. Amazing goal. And from there on out, the match, especially in the second half, obviously we all know Colorado Springs Switchback's ability to create offensively and their offensive threat, especially in transition off of the counterattack. Probably one of the best teams in the league, one of the fastest teams in the league as far as offensive attack goes. But the Locos held tough. They held tough. It was a gutsy, gritty win. At the end of the game, John Hutchinson called it ugly, but at the end of the day, it's 3 points at home against one of the best teams in the entire USL Championship. So it was a valuable 3 points for the Locomotive in a game where one of the most notable things, aside from the amazing goal scored by the Locos, John Hutchinson, and I agree with him wholeheartedly. He said that the first 35 minutes of Saturday night's match against the Switchbacks were the best 35 minutes that his team has played all season long. completely agree with him in every sense of the word. The Locos took it hard to the switchbacks in the first half, but in the second half, it was definitely Colorado taking to the offensive. And like I said, once again, fortunately for the Locomotive, they were able to hold on to keep the clean sheet, their eighth of the season, and to get the win.
What was the key for El Paso to be able to limit such an offensive power from Colorado?
You know what I think it was is Colorado, we know, capitalizes on the mistakes, the silly turnovers, the silly loss of possession from whatever team it is that they're playing. They capitalize that. And while El Paso did lose possession, the Locos did turn the ball over. And that allowed for Colorado to have its chances. That's what Colorado depends on. I still think that El Paso kept those turnovers, kept those losses of possessions to a minimum. And even if they would lose possession, they would apply defensive pressure really quickly to where they would limit or hinder that offensive transition that the switchbacks get into so quickly to produce a counterattack. So just turning down the amount or the quantity of careless turnovers and careless loss of possession, I think that was definitely the key.
So there was actually a very, I want to say, it was an interesting moment at the end in this match, and that was obviously the two red cards, one for Connor Mahoney, another for Lucho Soniak. What happened? What happened there?
It was two separate incidents. For Connor Mahoney, it was just an aggressive play in the midfield where I think he pulled down Lucho. The referee saw it. The fourth official really got involved in this one, and it went to a direct red card, which was justified, I think, in my opinion. The second one for Lucho. The second one for Lucho is the result of what was probably the biggest factor in the second half. The referee for the referee for this match, his last name was Kilpatrick, and he had main character. He had a little bit of just with what we call main character syndrome. He wanted to get into the game. He wanted to be a protagonist in the game. He was calling an excessive amount of fouls. And just he was disrupting the game. He was just constantly disrupting the game, becoming way too involved, not letting them play, not letting plays run themselves out, even though there was there was a foul or anything. And both players, or excuse me, both teams were getting very frustrated with the referee. And Lucho's second yellow card comes directly off of just mouthing off and being verbal with the referee. He gets his second yellow card, and it was one hell of a silly yellow card to get it at that point in the game. And I believe it's the third red card that the Locomotive have had in 3 consecutive games. So that's definitely something that I wish they would clean up. And it just surprises me that for an experienced player like Lucho Solanac, for him to fall victim to what was a marginal job by the center referee, who just he was a factor in what was the second half of the game.
So in the end, El Paso is able to hold on for a 1-0 lead. Currently in the standings for the USL Championship, obviously you have San Antonio FC, who, despite being on a bye week, with the fact that Colorado Springs did not get the 3 points, and even if they did, they would have still been behind San Antonio FC, who go into this week with 40 points with only 17 matches played. El Paso Locomotive are in 5th place with 33 points in 21 games. And RGVFC on the outside looking in with only 24 points, 5 points away from 7th place Sacramento Republic in 19 games. So RGVFC's time is running out a little bit, but there is still time to make it to the playoffs. And so now we move on to the next.
Really quick, I'm just
Yeah.
gonna. I know we talked about how San Antonio FC obviously didn't play this past week, but this was the second week in a row that SAFC things just went their way. Even in matches where they weren't playing, a couple weeks ago, SAFC gets a win on a Tuesday, a win on a Saturday, and this was
Mhm.
the same week that San Diego beat the Switchbacks, and then the next week, or actually I think around that time too, in Copa Tejas play y'all's teams drew each other. That helps
Yes.
SAFC in the race for that competition. And then even with SAFC not playing, even with pictures of Ignacio Bailone and Santiago Patino on a beach somewhere drinking piña coladas, just chilling at the top of the table. I don't know if you guys saw that. Uh, you know, Colorado Springs drops another game. They're really in a midseason skid all of a sudden. It's strange. And from being at the top of the table, they've now just gotten dragged into all the teams that are kind of chasing second place basically because SAFC
Mhm.
is really starting to put some distance between themselves and everyone else. So even in matches that SAFC or without them playing, things still went their way the last few weeks, and I'm sure they really enjoy that.
I'm sure that that picture is going to be very memeable from what you're telling me. In fact, I think that should actually be this week's picture of the episode. I think that'd be very hilarious. But moving on into this upcoming weekend, I'm pretty sure we're going to make our editor very, very happy for the duration of this episode. But San Antonio FC will be back in action this weekend, this Saturday at 9 p.m. at Toyota Field against Atlanta United 2. We talk about how difficult or how easy Atlanta United has been for a lot of teams. Then all of a sudden, their attacking prowess has kind of woken up in the last couple of games for Atlanta United too. We're talking about they scored 3 against Birmingham, they scored 2 against El Paso Locomotive, scored 4 against Charleston Battery. What are your thoughts on this particular game, Jonathan?
Yeah, so the weird thing about Atlanta is they score a decent number of goals, but they also have the leakiest defense in the league. I don't know if I haven't really gotten a chance to watch them play for extended periods of time. I don't know if they play defense. I don't know if they know how to play defense. But with guys like I can't think of his name off the top of my head, but he scored I think like 2 braces in consecutive matches recently. They've got guys on the offensive end that are able to score goals, and as we all know, like to win, you just have to score more goals than your opponent. So sometimes, if you've got a leaky defense, it's all right. You might have enough on the offensive end to compensate for that. But it's, as the saying goes, offense wins games, defense wins championships. And so I think it'll be really interesting to see, particularly with SAFC having, had a couple weeks off now, how are they going to be able to handle that offense? And are they going to be able to capitalize on the defensive end? I mean, um, drawing from my experience covering FC Dallas, they recently played New York City FC, who had conceded like 10 goals in 4 games. So you think, oh, it's going to be easy for Dallas to, score some goals to really get in behind that defense. And Dallas gets blanked last night. So you never know. These trends sometimes just end suddenly, and a team that was not looking very good suddenly flips a switch and looks a lot better, in one aspect of their play.
The thing I noticed about I've obviously seen Atlanta United or Atlanta United 2 for 90 minutes when they played the Locos a couple of weekends ago. And the one thing that I kind of noticed about them is any other MLS 2 side that participates in the USL, there's there's a consistency about these teams where it's like, yeah, you're a 2 team, you're a second team, you're a JV squad, if not a freshman team, and it's very very evident. With Atlanta, it, it they play in streaks where they look like a very sound and well versed USL championship team. That was the one thing that stuck out about them when they played El Paso Locomotive.
Yeah, and I know that they had for a while they had Rio's Novo on goal, and then now he actually played against Real Salt Lake in MLS play. But frankly, yeah, it's one of those teams where on paper it looks easy defensively, and I know that it's one of those weird games to call, at least for me, because we talk about how solid the San Antonio's defense is, right? And then we also talk about the fact that their offense tends to struggle putting shots on frame into the opponent's nets. But I honestly think that this defense is so leaky that it'll give them clear opportunities, probably one on one against the keeper. And when you have killers out there that are able to take advantage of those opportunities, I think it's going to be one of those high scoring games that SAFC are gonna take advantage to help themselves out with the goal difference. And this is one of those games where teams have to take advantage of their leaky defense. So hopefully we'll see some of that at Toyota Field on Saturday. And then 1 hour later, we've got a game for El Paso Locomotive. They will be traveling to Oakland, where they will take on the Oakland Roots at Laney Football Stadium. Now, we know that Oakland Roots is right now currently outside the playoffs looking in. They did have a tendency lately to be the comeback kings of the USL Championship. And ever since their draw against or the Toros 2-2, they lost against New Mexico United. They drew against San Antonio, got a win against Atlanta United 2, and then lost 3-1 against Oakland Roots. And then, surprisingly, if I recall correctly, they drew 3-3 to Sacramento Republic, but this time the tortilla got flipped the other way. In that Sacramento Republic got a late minute draw against Oakland thanks to Luis Felipe Fernandez. Given this and the fact that they've got, I think he's the leading goal scorer right now, if I'm not correctly. I'm talking about Ottar Magnus Carlson. What are you expecting, Joe?
Well, you called them the kings of the comeback kings. I think it's safer to say that Oakland Roots are the kings of draws. They have 10 of them this season, 5 wins and 10 draws and 6 losses. So yeah, no. The thing with Oakland, obviously a second-year team. Um, the Roots is um, Oakland. I think historically is a much a tougher, much more complicated team than what their position in the standings table always indicates. And they, last year, same situation. They hovered around, the bubble of making the playoffs. They make it into the playoffs, final seeding, play El Paso Locomotive, defeat the Locomotive. So yeah, no, Oakland is always much better of a team than what their record indicates is, a year and a half in existence. I think that's been their MO. So yeah, definitely for El Paso Locomotive, it's going to be a tough game. Talking to the players this Tuesday at media availability, they're all well aware of that. They're all well aware of going to Northern California. They're looking forward to a slightly cooler climate up in Northern California, but they're perfectly aware of who it is that they're going to play, and their record doesn't mean a whole lot to the locals because they're perfectly aware that they're a sound team and they're a team that works at it. And I think it's evident with all of the draws that they've had. Maybe they haven't had enough to win, but they sure as hell haven't lost. So they work the situation that's in front of them to get the result. So yeah, it's going to be a tough game. It's going to be an interesting game. It's going to be at 8 o'clock at night here in the borderland. 9 o'clock Central Time, 7 o'clock Pacific Time. So yeah, it's definitely going to be a good game, good match, good challenge for the Locomotive. Got to remember the Locomotive have the longest unbeaten streak in the entire USL right now. It's sitting at 10. But I think in this situation, it would be nice, obviously, to draw to be able to obtain the 3 points. A draw obviously would also be good, but obviously El Paso is going to play to win, and it's going to be a tough situation. It's going to be a very, very tough game, and at the end of the day, I think it'll be the difference in this one will be 1 goal. Whoever wins, it'll be interesting to see.
And then on Sunday, July 17th, RGVFC will be hosting Las Vegas Lights at HEB Park in a match that will be broadcasted on ESPN Deportes. So if you all have cable and you have the Spanish package, you'll be able to watch that game from Rio Grande Valley. And honestly, this is going to be a very it's going to be one of those games where it's going to be very equal. Both teams coming in a similar situation. They've got a similar record. We've Las Vegas Lights is currently sitting in 8th with 7 wins, 4 draws, and 7 losses. And RGV has 7 wins, 3 draws, and 9 losses. So they're in a pretty similar situation. Both of them. Obviously, you have RGV as home field advantage with the field size, the heat and humidity. Man, it has been 100 plus degrees here the last couple of days, and it's forecasted to be the same this week. And so that might be something that'll be helpful for them when it comes to the humidity, because remember, yes, Las Vegas can be high heat, but it's the dry heat that everybody talks about, so that could play a factor, and
it always does.
It always seems to be for our RGV, but a lot of the thing about it is that, and we talked about it before, like the players have to do their part, because we see these teams struggling, but they can't take advantage of them with goals because they can't put it in the back of the net. So that's been the issue for RGV. Joe.
Question, Edson, whatever happened with the promise and the potential of all of these players that had visa issues? Did that ever develop within the roster?
So Frank Gaviria ended up coming into the squad already. The only one that is still like MIA and nothing has been said officially yet is from the Ghanaian player, but his name kind of escapes my mind at this moment. But it was a player that was announced in preseason, as soon as the season was going to start. But he had been having issues, from what I heard. Like he was having issues with his the last team that he played with in Ghana, that was making difficult for the RGV to be able to acquire his player's card, por así decirlo. And it's made it difficult with the negotiations, from what I've been told. I had heard that there was that something had been there was an accord between both teams, but he still hasn't been here in the Rio Grande Valley. And we've seen RGV make some moves, lately, like bringing in Akid Ward and obviously Pinzon from Tapatio in the Liga de Expansión. So it might be safe to say, that given the situation that we're already past the halfway mark,
it's a lost cause.
It's probably a lost cause, but don't quote me on it. Like there's got to be some something, beneath the surface of this whole situation with the player. But having said all of this, having talked about a little bit of a preview between all games, we've between the San Antonio's game, El Paso's game, and RGV's game. Now we go into our favorite segment of the show, and that is our points predictions for the Texas USL teams. Joe.
I want to go first. I never go first.
All right, Joe.
Totally fair.
Somehow, Jonathan is going to steal your idea. But go
4
ahead.
points. 1 win, 1 loss, 1 draw. I have a feeling this week sets itself up perfectly for that.
Okay,
And I'm
Jonathan.
going to go out on the limb and say the draw is at San Antonio. Mind my words.
Oh, you know what's funny, Joe. Remember last episode that we had? I don't remember which one, where I said that where it seemed like El Paso and SAFC had were going to have the easy games, and then I said one of them was going to drop the game, and it was so close for El Paso to do that, but at the very end, you all guys salvaged the point. So I'm like, I was so close. So you say it's 4 points. Jonathan, what do you think?
I'm actually kind of disappointed that Joe didn't pick what I was going to pick, because I think it would have been, perfectly appropriate if I choose, his point total. Like, he is always going, dang, that was mine. I'm gonna be optimistic. I'm gonna say 7 points. Someone's gonna drop 2 of them. Someone's gonna resign themselves to a draw. But I think SAFC should win their match, especially with the rest. And you guys have, or your teams, I should say, have difficult matches, but capable of getting a result in each, I think.
So Joe says 4. Jonathan, you say 7. I say 5. I think it's going to be a win, and it's going to be 2 draws. I think that's what's going to happen this week. So we'll see who's right in these predictions. But nonetheless, it's going to be a very fun weekend for all that are listening right now. It's going to be a very fun weekend of USL soccer for you all to watch on ESPN Plus or ESPN Deportes, right? In the case of RGV's game, but guys,
and the games are going to be on all in different time slots, which is the best part.
Oh yeah, well, I think y'all's overlap, no, on Saturday, because it's
San Antonio starts at 7. Which is 6 o'clock here.
Okay.
7 o'clock Central Time, which is 5 o'clock West Coast time. So the Oakland Roots game starts at 7 o'clock West Coast time, which is 9 o'clock Central Time.
Because the reason I say, because I think that Google says it starts at 8 Central. Jonathan, who's correct?
You think I know the USL schedule by heart off the top of my head?
Yeah.
Yeah, because, so on the USL website,
I have confidence in our listeners that they can look at social media, look online, and find out what time their team plays. I believe in our listeners.
Yeah, so the USL website has it at 9 Eastern
for
San Antonio, and then 10
so
Eastern, and it's 10 Eastern for Oakland versus El Paso.
Oh, okay. 10 Eastern, Oakland, El Paso.
Yeah.
There's no way.
That's 10 wrong. Eastern, so that would be like
7
local time, 8 in El Paso.
Yeah, 8 in El Paso. Yeah, you're right.
Yeah.
Yeah.
But guys, that's going to do it for this episode of the Striker Tejas podcast. Once again, we thank you for all of your support. If you guys made it this far, obviously be sure to give a review of the Striker Tejas podcast on all of the social media platforms. I mean, and all of the podcasting platforms like Spotify, Google Podcasts, Apple Podcasts, et cetera. Be sure to follow us on all of our social media at the Striker News on Twitter and at the Striker Soccer on Instagram. By the way, we do have to say huge congratulations, obviously, to all of our executive directors for this new step that they have taken the Striker to. We have expanded outside of Texas with coverage in California and in Atlanta for Atlanta United as well. So
make sure and subscribe, everyone.
Yeah, be sure to subscribe to the Striker Texas. We've added coverage, but the actual price of the subscription has stayed the same, ladies and gentlemen. So be sure to go out there and subscribe so you can get access to all of our premium content. Joe, Jonathan, any last words before we go?
Not here. Everyone enjoy their weekend. This episode's coming a little later in the week, but still in time prior to kickoff of your Texas USL teams.
I think we've said more than enough. I'm good.
All right, guys. We'll see each other next week for another episode of the Striker Tejas podcast. Have a good weekend.